Hello and welcome to another HanDrinksSolo wine info video, this time on the award-winning Lievland Bushvine Pinotage. Now the 2018 vintage of this Pinotage was a South African Pinotage top 10 finalist and also earned itself 90 points at the International Wine and Spirits competition. But then winemaker 𝕊𝕤𝕆𝕚𝕚𝕚 went all Deadpool 2 on us, screaming, "The body count must be higher," which is why this 2019 sequel that we're drinking now scored 91 points at the International Decanter Award and 96 points at the Old Mutual Trophy Awards. Now, 96 is a lot of points. It's a lot of anything, really. And I know that the 100-point scale is a little bit broken because we kind of only use the top 25. So I thought what I'd do is put together a quick key to help you understand the useful zone of the scale. 78 points. 88 points. 90 points. 96 points. But back to the wine at hand. As it turns out, this particular Pinotage is in fact only 86% Pinotage. And there are a fair number of reasons related to the logistics and mechanics of harvesting and winemaking that say that even that percentage is pretty tricky to nail down. Now, the significance of this 86% is that it is right on the cusp of not being able to be called a cultivar wine. If there was in fact only 84% Pinotage in this wine, it would have to be called a blend. In South Africa, in order to name a wine after its dominant cultivar, there has to be at least 85% of that cultivar in the blend. In this case, it would be 85% of Pinotage to be called a Pinotage. So admittedly, it is a fairly abstract point.
There is no spoon.
But part of me has to chuckle at the fact that the wine that wins in its cultivar category, the highest scoring wine in this cultivar group, in fact has as little of that cultivar as is legally allowed. But perhaps less abstractly and more importantly, this is an absolutely delicious wine, and so we want to slow down and figure out,
how did he do that? How did he do that?
So first of all, as it says on the label, it's a bushvine Pinotage. And I think in South Africa, largely the term bushvine has this air of magic and mystery about it. Like, if it came from a bushvine, then it has to be fantastic. And this is not always the case. For example, if you look at a bushvine, you'll see that the nature of its canopy is a little more chaotic and all over the place, which means it's very hard to make sure that each of the grape bunches on a bushvine get the same amount of sun over the same period of time, which means come harvest time, you can have all sorts of ripening levels in different bunches all over the place. Now, bushvine fanatics will say, but that's part of the process. It adds to the complexity of the wine. And I'd say, yeah, but I could take a dump in the fermentation vat. That would also add complexity to the wine. Not necessarily something we want to pursue, though. But for all my skepticism over some of the claims surrounding bushvines, in the South African context, there are actually quite a few good reasons why seeing bushvine on a label may imply a higher quality wine. For starters, many of our bushvines are slightly older and therefore deliver more concentrated fruit. They're also often planted in some of our warmer, hotter regions like the Swartland or Paarl, again pointing to an increased level of fruit expression. One can then add on top of those two facts that in these dry areas, amongst quality-conscious producers, dry land farming is often applied where no irrigation is allowed, which again adds to a further level of concentration. So while this is not always the case, often the term bushvine will mean hotter region, dry land farmed from slightly older vines. All those work together to create a pretty decent wine. Now, in another video, we can discuss terrestrial radiation in a bushvine and even the role of canopy protection. But for this particular wine here today, our takeaway is that the bushvines serve to deliver rich, complex fruit layers in the wine. And just in case you weren't convinced by those three factors, there is the added element of the fact that this vineyard receives quite a lot of wind and so suffers a sort of natural green harvesting whereby bunches are blown off the vine and the yield is reduced, again,
you guessed it,
increasing concentration in the fruit. All of these factors combine to produce what is an enormously expressive wine. And I think the winemakers have been quite clever actually to maintain balance by blending in some lighter components in that 14% so that you don't have an overpowering, stodgy wine, but rather you've got the expression, you've got aromas, you've got fruit, and you've still got something that carries a sense of elegance. It really is an exceptional expression of Pinotage, albeit only 86%. And for those of you who may have been worried that this is one of those wild, woolly, crunchy tannin early harvest Pinotages, it is not. And in fact, it sees 13 months in oak, which gives it a little bit of a polish. It lends a beautifully silky mouthfeel to the whole affair. And if you have any questions about Lievland or about bushvines or Pinotage or about the effect of oak on Pinotage, drop them in the comment section below and I will get back to you as soon as possible.